नमस्कार। स्वागत है आपका हमारे अगले कार्यक्रम में। एक छोटा सा मैसेज टेक्निकल टीम की तरफ से मैं आपको देना चाहूँगा कि यदि कभी लाइव के बीच में आपका लाइव बंद हो जाता है तो कृपया एक बार अपने फ़ोन से यूट्यूब बंद कर दोबारा आप उसे खोलने का कष्ट करें, तो शायद आपका लाइव दोबारा से अच्छे से काम करने लगे। फेसबुक और यूट्यूब दोनों के लिए हम यही गुजारिश करना चाहेंगे, यदि किसी टेक्निकल प्रॉब्लम की वजह से आपका ब्राउज़र काम नहीं कर रहा है तो एक बार उसको क्लोज़ करके दोबारा से खोलने का प्रयास करें। और हमारा एक कार्यक्रम ख़त्म होने के बाद भी आपसे गुजारिश है कि एक बार ब्राउज़र अपना बंद कर दोबारा से खोलने का कष्ट करें। धन्यवाद। हम अब अपना अगला कार्यक्रम शुरू करते हैं। अगला कार्यक्रम शुरू करने से पहले हम एक वीडियो मैसेज आप सबके बीच रखना चाहेंगे, जो कि प्रोफेसर मनोज धर, वाइस चांसलर यूनिवर्सिटी ऑफ जम्मू के द्वारा हमें भेजा गया है। धन्यवाद।
In these testing times, due to COVID-19, all of us are experiencing stress. Fear about the health and welfare of our family, friends, and citizens in general is leading to many problems, including changes in the sleep patterns, eating patterns, increased use of harmful substances, and also worsening of mental and other health conditions. Against this backdrop, the present effort of SPIC MACAY is highly commendable. As our Honorable Prime Minister has said, SPIC MACAY is the finest example of volunteer organization. The holding of Anubhav, which is a week-long, well-structured event for connecting all of us, especially the youth, to culture and heritage of our country, while sitting at home, sets a unique example of alleviating the stressful conditions and providing a solace to the inner self, so as to reach the summit of the inner Mount Everest, as per the words of Dr. Kiran Seth. I must mention that I am delighted to say these few words, particularly because SPIC MACAY and University of Jammu have had a very long association, and we shall continue to be associated in whatever way we can. I wish to compliment Dr. Seth Saab and Dr. Sapna Sangra, our faculty member and chairperson SPIC MACAY J&K, for providing me this opportunity. God bless you all. Thank you so much.
धन्यवाद सर। तो आइए शुरू करते हैं अपना अगला कार्यक्रम।
Namaste. Now in SPIC MACAY Anubhav series, we have with us an eminent artist of our times, Shri Gulam Mohammed Sheikh ji. He studied BA and MA in Fine Arts from Maharaja Sayaji Rao University of Baroda, which he later also joined as a professor. He also studied at Royal College of Art, London. A recipient of Padma Bhushan, Shri Gulam Mohammed Sheikh ji is also an acclaimed poet and an art critic. Now, we would like to welcome you, sir.
Thank you. Should I start, or are you asking a question?
So I think you start, sir. It will be good that you start the address.
Well, in a way, this is a story of my life as an artist. I grew up in a small town in erstwhile Kathiawar. In those days, it was called Saurashtra. When there were states of, Bombay Presidency and Kathiawar. So I was born in 1937 in a kind of a middle class Muslim family, and it belonged to the community, was sort of in a way related to jobs like oil crushing or selling of oil seeds. We used to call this in Gujarati as ghachi. In Hindi, it could be called teli. But my father was a progressive man, and he wanted his children to study. There was sort of wide-scale sort of lack of education in the community, but he educated all his children. And I had 3 brothers and a sister, all elder to me. So I was the youngest, and I had the opportunity to finish my, what you call in those days, it was secondary school examination. But let me tell you the story, how it all began. I was a frequent visitor to the library in the town. That library was called George Birdwood Library. You may have heard of the great Indologist called George Birdwood. And perhaps number of institutions were named after him. This was set up in the British period, and it had number of all very finely bound volumes with letterings in gold. I used to go there and I used to read newspapers, magazines. I also learned Hindi in those days, and so I used to see Aajkal. I also learned to read English a little. And there was a journal named Mag. Mag was a journal of art. And I used to look at the illustrations of paintings. But I had no idea that I would study painting until I met Ravi Shankar Rawal. Now, Ravi Shankar Rawal was called Kala Guru of Gujarat. He was a very well-known artist who had trained a large number of artists, and he had a studio and its private art school in Ahmedabad. Now, he happened to come to my hometown, Surendranagar, because he was advised by his doctors to go to a place with dry climate. And Surendranagar, that region, had dry climate. And one of his nephews was, I think, working there. Now, he had nothing much to do, so he landed up in the library. And the librarian, whose son was my classmate in the school, librarian introduced me to Ravi Bhai, that is Ravi Shankar Rawal. And Ravi Shankar Rawal saw that there was nothing else to do, so he asked me, he said, do you do painting? I say, I do. And I must have shown him some small watercolors that I might have done. I don't remember now. But he said, let's do something for the library. And he decided to have the outer walls of the library, where, as you know, there are these square portions which are washed white in chuna, in lime. And he said that we will do sort of what we call in Gujarati chaya chitra, that means shadow pictures. So it is just a picture without details, I said, but what do we draw? He said, well, you work with me. So he said, we will do history of the world. So I got quite confused, but he told me, he said, look, we'll paint images, pictures of how fire was invented, how language was invented, how various other things were invented, and we will fill up the whole compound of the library with these pictures. Well, we did not have any funds, so we got some paint from the hardware shop, like what we call black, which is like it's like made from the coal, and geru, that means red. And he drew the image, and I filled up all the images with this black or red color. And library had sort of images all around it, literally the history. Well, I was very excited doing that job with him. And he then asked me, he said, what was I planning to do after I finished my school? So I said, none of my brothers have been to college, but I would like to go to college, but I do not know how. So he said, okay, I'll tell you where to go. And he told me about Baroda. And he said, I'll give you a letter of recommendation. But I said, I don't know whether my family can afford to educate me. So he said, okay, there is a scholarship by the government of Saurashtra. And that is rupees 50 a month. And you should be able to manage within that. So I said, fine. I went and told my father, and my father could not refuse somebody like Ravi Shankar Rawal, who was a major personality of Gujarat. Now, there is a side story, let me tell you. I discovered a number of letters written by him some years ago. And I found that these were answers to my letters. And I had written a number of letters in which I must have complained or grumbled that I don't have enough money, I don't know how to go about, etc., etc. And he has given me advice in which he says, look at this man, who is now a magistrate. He used to be son of a peon. Look at that man who is now, a big officer. And he used to belong to a very low community with very little income. So that means that Ravi Shankar Rawal was really guiding me to come out of the situation I belonged to. And he felt, and he told me, he said that if you have the desire and if you have the passion to learn, you will be able to make it anywhere. I still remember those words. And then I told my family. Now my family was literally quite liberal, except the fact that we were Muslims and we all, performed namaz 5 times a day. But it's interesting that in the school, I had opted for Sanskrit. So in my childhood, when I went to what is called a madrasa to learn the Quran, and I read Quran in Arabic. But when I went to school, I studied Sanskrit. And there, I was able to read, the works of Kalidas or other great Sanskrit poets. So in a way, my life was a combination of all these forces. And so I decided to leave. And Ravi Shankar Rawal said that, well, before you go, you come to Ahmedabad and see me. My friend, the librarian's son, who was a classmate called Arvind, said, I will join you, but I'll come up to Ahmedabad. I won't come to Baroda. Well, he came to Ahmedabad, until Ahmedabad, and we went to Ravi Bhai's place. He gave us lunch, and then he asked me, he said, where are you going to stay in Baroda? So I said, sir, I don't know. I vaguely remember that my family must have given me name of a relative. I didn't want to live with a relative. I wanted to be independent. So Ravi Bhai said, okay, I'll give you this letter. You carry it with you. And I did. And Arvind left for Surendranagar. I boarded the train to Baroda, got down. I must have taken a small trunk, those days, we used to carry metal trunks, small metal trunks. And I must have boarded a Tonga. And I reached the place where address of which the address was given. That was near Raupura Tower. And near the tower, it was on the top of the building. And in that building, I knocked and I said, "Sir, here is a letter for you." And this gentleman, whose name was Ram Vyas, he saw the letter and recognized the handwriting, and he said, "Yes, it is from Ravi Shankar Raval." I said, "Yes." So he said, "He has recommended that I put you up." I said, "I can't put you up here, but I can put you up in my photo studio. This is my photo studio. And you have to stay in the dark room." So for the first 2 or 3 nights in Baroda, when I was giving my aptitude test for joining the Faculty of Fine Arts as a student, I spent in the dark room. Literally, I was moving away from a dark alley and I was entering into another place. And that was the Faculty of Fine Arts, where I got admission. Then I got into a hostel. It was, I think, called Jivraj Mehta Hall. And it was literally 6 years. Now, 50 rupees of the scholarship sometimes arrived and sometimes did not. But I remember that I managed somehow or other, there were many students like me. So we would all order a tiffin from the hostel, and 3 of us would eat from single tiffin. And of course, there was tea and everything, so we could manage. The Fine Arts College was an amazing institution. It was so liberal and so sort of, free of any restrictions. And I saw that there were not only men, but many women, young girls, who were also learning painting, and some of them even smoked. I was not familiar with such sort of events. One of my biggest problems was to learn English, because I had not learned English properly, and here everybody spoke English. So I made friends with my senior students and learned to speak. And in a year or 2, I also managed, and I mixed with them. The best thing about the Faculty of Fine Arts was that it allowed you to work throughout the day and also at night, if you so wish. The studios were open. And second thing was that it had an excellent library. Now I was moving from Birdwood Library to an art library where literally 90% of books were on art, on visual art, particularly on Indian art, on Western art, on Chinese art and whatnot. And I spent a great deal of time studying in the library besides working in the studios. But by the time I was in my 5th year, I felt that I should now do my own. I had done, usual grind, watercolor and oil and portraits and landscapes, etc. But I must now learn to do something independently, something which is my own. I worked very hard, but it was very difficult in those days because I didn't have, as I told you, enough money to buy paints. But one of our teachers, K.G. Subramanian, whom you used to call Mani Sahib, had developed a medium which came handy to students like me. It was a mixture of double-boiled linseed oil and wax, which were boiled together and made into some kind of a gel, a kind of a pulp, which you could mix with hardware paints. Hardware paints were the cheapest paint available in the market, as I had used in the library, in the painting on the compound of the Fine Arts, of the Surendra Nagar Library. Again, the same hardware paint were available mixed with this new medium, which was like a gel. So you could paint like mad. You have everything in your hand. You have few brushes. You make your canvas. You prime it yourself. And you have a carpenter who makes very little structure of it, what we call stretcher. I must have done at least 200 or more paintings in those 2 years. Now, while I was in my second year, that means I was in the master's course, one of our ex-students and teachers was going abroad, who used to teach art history. His name was Ratan Parimu. And my professor and dean, a very famous painter called N.S. Bendre, Narayan Sridhar Bendre. Narayan Sridhar Bendre was known to be one of the finest painters in the country, who at one point of time in the Bombay Art Society had competed with Amrita Shergill and won an award. So he was considered a master painter, and we all used to call him Dada. And Dada was quite a strong word, and he was a strong man. So he called me. He was the dean at that time, and he said, "Mr. Sheikh, I see that you spend a lot of time in the library. I understand that you are interested in art history. Now, Mr. Parimu is going abroad. Would you like to teach?" So I said, "Sir, that's very kind of you, but there is a problem." He said, "What's the problem?" So I said, "Sir, I'm still studying. I'm finishing my second year in MA." He said it in Hindi. He said, "तो क्या हो गया? यहाँ पढ़ो, वहाँ पढ़ो." He said, "What is the problem? You study in the senior classes and teach in the junior classes." So I said, "Fine." And that I got a job while I was still a student, and I got 250 rupees as a salary. Can you believe it? And I gave a big party, called all my friends, and we went to a restaurant and had a ball. Anyway, that was the year I also decided that when I finished my studies, I must have an exhibition. Now, it so happened that some years ago, while I was in second year, Professor Bendre had called Mr. M.F. Hussain, Maqbool Fida Hussain. You must have heard his name of, very famous painter. And he had given a demonstration of his painting. And I had gone to him meekly saying, "Sir, would you come and see my work?" and all that. So he was very kind, and he used to look at works of students. Now it was me going to him in 1961 and asking him whether he would open my exhibition. And can you believe he agreed? And he said, "Yes, I'll come." And he opened my exhibition. Now, this little background will tell you what I was painting. It is possible that since I had done a lot of painting on horses, it's possible that I had seen Hussein's paintings of horses. But there is a difference. Hussain painted his horses, which were like unbridled animals, primal animals. My horses were horses of a tonga, rather lonely, sometimes saddled to a tonga, sometimes without. They're wandering in the forest. Sort of, in a way, it also reflected to an extent the life of a young, perhaps a lost artist who was looking for a new idiom. And there I had this number of paintings on horses. You have one of my horse paintings with you. So Hussain opened my exhibition. And this is one of the about 50 or 60 such paintings that I showed in the Jahangir Art Gallery at that point of time. And I remember that I was then introduced to some of the best people in the world of art. I met many an artist. I met many other very prominent personalities like Ibrahim Al-Qazi, who set up the National School of Drama, if you remember, but he used to be also very well versed in arts, and he used to give lectures on art. So art in a way opened doors for me to enter into another territory. So first it was the family, and that I broke out from. Then it was the institution as a student, and I broke out from. And now I embarked upon the journey of an artist. And this is how it all began. Do you have any question about this or any further question?
सर ये जो आपकी पेंटिंग है ये इसका मीडियम क्या है? So what is the medium of this painting?
इसका मीडियम वही है जो मैं कह रहा था कि it is made in that medium of gel using the black pigment and other pigments from hardware. But it is so wonderful a medium. I remember that after about 40 years, somebody in Bombay who possessed one of those paintings had come to show it to me in Chemold Art Gallery, and I saw that painting did not have a single crack and its colors had not faded, which means the medium that Mani Sahib or Subramanian invented in those days was a perfect medium. And I used that medium. You use with a brush or with a knife, what we call palette knife. And this when you give a kind of a stroke with a knife, it's a kind of a, it's a thick splash, it's kind of big. So I used to work in that kind of a thick, solid colors in those days. And I must have done several hundreds of paintings, and these are my sort of horses, mostly horses. And well, that is how the story began.
Right.
So I continue,
sir,
or you have another question?
yes, sir. Sir, did you continue using this medium further, or like was it only in your initial times that you were working with this medium?
You see, now I had got a job, and I could afford better pigments, better colors. So I was able to use Winsor Newton and various other brands. So it was not possible in the first 5 years that I was in the fine arts. But after that, I was able to. And I had 3 exhibitions between 61 and 63 while I was teaching. I taught as a student, and I'll tell you that some of the students of those days who happened to be my friends and they were in my class, some of them had to sit in my class. Bhupen Khakkar was one of them. Nagji Patel was another one. And there were few others. Vivan Sundaram joined painting department in 1961 when I started teaching. So he was one of my early students. These are all well-known painters of India today, painters and sculptors. Now the story is that after 3 years, when I had completed my teaching, I had applied for a government scholarship. It's called Commonwealth Scholarship to go abroad, to go to London to study at the Royal College of Art. And I was lucky to get the scholarship. So in 1963, I boarded a plane. I think for the first time in my life, I got onto a flight. And that that was an international flight. And I reached London. You know what I did in London? One of the first things, I had read in a magazine called Time magazine. It's still running, you know, the famous American magazine called Time, about a film called 8½ by Federico Fellini, well-known Italian filmmaker. And one of my friends, old friends from Fine Arts, was in London at that time. His name is Praful Dave. And I told Praful, I want to see this film in London because I have read in Time magazine that it's running in London. So the very first thing I did, then I was to see the film, then I went to a jazz club and everything. And finally, it was Royal College of Art. I do not know how familiar you are with the Royal College of Art. It was in an old building. And that building was next to the museum called Victoria and Albert Museum. The Victoria and Albert Museum has one of the largest collection of the world art, which included and includes Indian art. Now, one of the things that I did during those days while I was at the Royal College of Art, I would go to my studio in the morning and work there. Now, you go for lunch, and I remember that the canteen food in the Royal College of Art was lousy. And I got fed up. I said, now I should look for something better if I could afford. And I found that in the museum there was a cafeteria, and I could go there. And you'd be surprised that all museums in England in those days, I don't know even now, perhaps, were free. But not only that, we had direct access from the college because the building was next door to the Victoria and Albert Museum. We could go through the college building into the museum directly. And there I went to the, obviously, cafeteria. But on the way to the cafeteria, I saw the Indian section. And I found it fascinating. I said, what is this? And I looked at, I was familiar with Indian art because I had already taught that for 3 years. I also studied it while I was a student. And so I was not unfamiliar with Indian, what you call miniature paintings. But I got more and more interested as I looked at them, which were on display in the Victoria and Albert Museum. And finally I sought out the Indian section, and I found one of the curators called Robert Skelton. Now, Robert Skelton was an expert on Indian miniature painting. And I told him that I am a painter and I am very much interested in this painting. Can I look at some more? He showed me so many. And it so happened that in my 3rd year, when I was finishing my studies at the Royal College of Art, I was about to do my little exhibition and to get my degree. I was supposed to write a dissertation. Now, what would I write on? And my friend and now my mentor, Robert Skelton, advised me to work on a painting I was interested in. I was interested in Kota School of Painting. There were paintings of hunts. There were the forests. There was one particular painting which was on display in the museum, which was sort of a forest in the moonlight. And I thought of a painter like Douanier Rousseau, who used to do sort of dreamlike works. And so Robert knew that. And so Robert said, why don't you work on Kota painting? So there I was. I started studying about Indian miniature painting and learned a great deal about it. And another aspect is the painting, that what would I do, if I were to now do in Royal College of Art, if I were to do my degree show. I had done some paintings of horses. I had also done some drawings. but I was not happy with them. It had come to a point where it was sort of an end. It was not moving anywhere. And one of my teachers, called Peter Blake, who was very well-known artist, who used to do collages. Now, collage is you have images from different kinds which you stick them together on a canvas. Sometimes tear it from a newspaper or a magazine and put it there. I did a series of works, small works, but I did not do actual collage. What I did was take photographs of my friends and then paint those photographs on canvas, in which I sometimes pasted something. Like I took a photograph of a friend of mine who was a French girl called Joelle, and I made a painting of hers, and there in the painting I stuck a picture postcard of Eiffel Tower. Anyway, that was my sort of an experiment in collage. So all that I had, and with my dissertation, I did get my, what they call, Associate of the Royal College of Art. That is a kind of a degree or diploma you got in those days. And I was back in India. And I thought that I will continue with collage. I did about 3 or 4 of them. But still, I was not very happy. I wanted to do something more ambitious. And there I started a painting, which you have. It's called Returning Home After Long Absence. Now, what I did in this painting is I sort of borrowed or quoted imagery from other artists, from elsewhere. Like in collage, you take a photograph which is published somewhere. Here, I chose a tree which was from a Mughal painting. I chose 2 or 3 angels from a Persian painting, from Iranian painting, which was a painting of the journey of the Prophet. And I also painted the little image of the Prophet in the sky. And I then added to it a kind of a group of houses with a tree. Now, group of houses were totally from my mind. And the tree was a tree which I am very fond of. That is a peepal tree. That means it's a ficus tree. And I used that tree that is right at the back with the white branches. So you can see the angels, you can see the chinar tree on the right, you can see the flight of the Prophet in the sky, and you can see the kind of a ghetto or the houses. And right in the front, what I have done is to put photograph of my mother, which I had taken. So I was using number of things. Like for instance, I was using in the language of art, we use we call it these different kind of languages. That means language of photography, language of a miniature painting from Mughal India, from Persia, then something from my imagination, something which I loved, and I put it all together. And this is a painting which opened many a door from me. And I thought there was no need to do a single image or a single painting. You know, I did only horses. And I did a few other things, but initially, for those years in Baroda, I painted only horses, one single image. Now there are multiple images coming from different sources. They are all put together, and they all then create a new world. So in that sense, this painting became a sort of a talisman for me, because it opened doors for many experiments. Do you have any question?
So we are very glad that we can look at this painting, because if we read about you, there is nowhere this painting is not mentioned. So definitely this is a very important and special painting.
What is not mentioned?
So this painting is mentioned at a lot of places wherever there is anything mentioned about you on the internet.
Well, internet walas don't think or imagine. They only go buy whatever material that is available to them. That's why here I am with you, to tell you what it is.
Yes.
So in a way, I was constructing something about home. If I were to think of home, what would be home? It is not a physical home. It's a kind of a home that you create, you build up for yourself. There are multiple homes, many homes. So in that sense, it is called returning home after a long absence. But in a way, it is also a new home. There is very little of that home in which I had lived in Surendranagar, except
Okay.
the figure of my mother. Now this opened many an avenue for me, and I thought that I could continue. Now, before I come to that, I come to another phase, and that is a point which is about our being part of the, republic, our being part of the polity of this country. And I remember that during 1975 and 77, it was the emergency. I suppose everybody knows about it. And all freedom was curbed. And you had literally nothing left. I need not dwell upon it. But what I can say is that I did a painting. I started a painting around 1975 in which I did those streets. In the streets, I had a big figure of a man with multiple hands running away. But as the painting progressed, and as you know, my painting sometimes lasts few years. Returning home lasted me 4 years. When it began, it was slightly different, but it grew, and finally, it was between 1969 and 73. Now, this painting was done during those 2 years. And in the 2 years, the big figure disappeared. And eventually, what is left is desolate street and all kind of almost like nothing is left. There are only animals. And animals seem to be looking into the houses which are vacated by people. Not very unfamiliar, no? But anyway, this was a painting which reflected on the situation during the emergency. And that is how I, in a way, made a comment on contemporary times. And that is why the painting is called Speechless City. Okay. Next to that, let me go back to returning home. That what I mentioned was that it opened number of avenues. And in 1979 and 1980, by 1981-82, I did about 4 paintings. There's one painting which reflected upon my time in my hometown in Surendranagar. Literally, it is the street. It's called Speaking Street. And there is a mosque in the middle in green, which has red roofs. And there are stories happening in every little corner of the street. In each room, something. There is a violence taking place. There are people, playing cards. There are somewhere in the street, fishermen are selling fish. Then there's also some kind of event happening right at the top. But what I'm trying to tell you is this, that in a way, returning home resulted in rediscovering your past and also recreating your past, not only painting it as it literally was, but to creatively reinterpret it and bring in elements or images which you would think would become part of your creative endeavor. So this was a painting, and this was, as you can see, was set in a small town, and that is called Speaking Street. Now the next painting, called City for Sale, was based in Baroda. Now I came to Baroda, well, first to study. Then from 1967, Baroda has been my home. It's the same place where, I found my family. Nilima and I got married. But it was during that period of time that Gujarat, in particular, in the 1969, there were those what we call communal riots. Such communal riots that it literally shook you from the bottom. And I realized for the first time when people started addressing me by my name, that means by segregating me by my name. So I learned what it was communalism. In Baroda, later on, in the 1979 and 80s, there were a series of riots. Every day, literally, there would be a riot or something somewhere. But at the same time, as you know, we live in this kind of a peculiar reality in our life. In one part of the city, there is a raging riot. On the other part of the city, people are very happily watching a film. So as you can see in this, there is a film being shown. It is called Silsila. And there is on top, if you were to see those figures, they are all denuding a man to find out whether he is circumcised or not. There is a woman who is with a vegetable sort of thela cart, is literally throwing them into the city. And there are these three men, sort of large figures. This painting is about 10 feet wide and 7 feet high. So the figures are about 6 feet, 5 to 6 feet. So that means life size. So if you stand in front of it, you literally identify with them. Now, these are the three odd people, They meet each other to find light. That means fire. That means you get a matchbox or a matchstick to light a bidi or a cigarette. But it's a potent symbol, as you know, that it is incendiary. It can happen anywhere. And you do not know who is the perpetrator of the riot and who is the victim. And this large painting went on for about 3 years, if I am not mistaken. And I had a very strange fear in those days that every time I picked up my brush, I felt as though a riot would break out somewhere in the city. But anyway, that is the story of that particular painting. So we come to early 80s. So now I had worked on a large scale. It's not actually true. Even earlier in my exhibitions in India, I had done, before going abroad, I had done paintings which were 10 feet wide, 8 feet wide. So this was a large painting, but with so many figures in it, which was a big challenge and which I somehow managed. Do you want to ask anything now, or shall I proceed?
Sir, I think we can proceed further.
Well, next stage. I thought that if we had to combat in art with this kind of a divisive ideology, segregating communities by their beliefs, belief system, their religions, what could an artist do? Now, there is one figure which constantly remained with me was Kabir, poet Kabir. I had read poetry of Kabir right from my childhood when I was at school. When I studied Hindi in those days. And I remembered the dohas of Kabir. बड़ा हुआ तो क्या हुआ जैसे पेड़ खजूर पंछी को छाया नहीं फल लागे अति दूर. What is so great about becoming big? बड़ा हुआ तो क्या हुआ जैसे पेड़ खजूर, as the great palm, the tall palm. पंछी को छाया नहीं. It doesn't give shade to a traveler. फल लागे अति दूर, and its fruits are very far. But this is not the only thing. I had read Kabir in many contexts, and I know that Kabir was fiercely, in that sense, a kind of a person who sought some kind of a, what is the word? He didn't actually belong to either Hinduism or Islam. He had sort of, his disciples from both the religion. And in fact, he lashed out at orthodoxy in both the religions, both Islam and Hinduism. But he taught several other things. Like, there are two aspects of it which greatly interested me. One aspect was his poetry where he said that everything is within yourself. That means if you want to seek God, the God is within you. You don't look out, you look within. For instance, I will give you an example. या घट भीतर सूर चंद है, या घट नौलख तारा. Just remember, ya ghat, this body, this ghat means this pot of a body. Ya ghat bhitar, inside this pot, inside this body. Sur chand hai, there are suns and moons. And ya ghat naulakh tara, there are 9 lakh stars within this very body itself. So it's not just body that he's talking about. He's talking about the self. You have to seek yourself. Where would you seek? If you have to seek within yourself. I do not want to dwell upon it longer, but I'll tell you about the second thing which he wrote. And that is a particular kind of poetry. A poetry which is called Ulat Banshi. Ulat Banshi means upside down. Something which is turned upside down, which means, as in English you would say, devil quoting scriptures. It's like that. Now I will show you one or two of my paintings, which will give you an idea about both poetry of Kabir and what the paintings are. You could stream one of the Kabir paintings now for the audience, it would make it simpler. Now this painting is a large painting. Large means it's about 6 to 7 feet high, and it is a face, if you can make out. That face is taken from a painting of Kabir made in Mughal times in the 18th century. I have just taken the outlines of that face and I have enlarged it to the scale. And that in that painting, I have put several images on top of it. So the face, in fact, which is like a portrait, becomes a landscape. That means all these figures are floating above it. If you could read out that's Ulat Banshi in particular in this painting is, it's shown in a number of ways. Like the guru falls at the feet of the disciple. Like child comes before the mother. Like number of things which are absolutely topsy-turvy, upside down. And if you were to read these images, you would be able to see them yourself. And that is a painting, in that sense, in my way, illustrates the spirit of Kabir's poetry. That means particularly Ulat Banshi. There is one particular one I'm trying to remember. ठाड़ा सिंह चरावे गाय, एक अचंभा देखा रे भाई, ठाड़ा सिंह चरावे गाय. Do you follow this? Hey, I saw the great wonder. एक अचंभा देखा रे भाई, ठाड़ा सिंह चरावे गाय. Look at this. Lion is looking after the cows. It is in that sense that he turns the story upside down. And that is the poetry of Kabir. The second one is a watercolor, which is again related to poetry of Kabir, where I have used the image of Kabir on the right. But as you can see, the tree is upside down, and which is almost like the Upanishad. As you can see that, Urdhva Mula Adashakha, they say. Similarly, there are all within the tree, the trains are running, the people are walking, all kinds of things are happening, and it is all upside down. This is what Kabir shows. Okay, shall we move on to, otherwise we'll get a bit late. Next one. I was surprised, and perhaps you might get surprised, that I got an invitation from the government to make a painting for its newly built, what you call, legislative assembly. And this was in Bhopal, that is the state of Madhya Pradesh. The architect was Charles Correa, the famous, celebrated architect. And I was shown a place which was a wall 31 feet high and 31 feet wide. And the time was about 6 to 8 months. I had to complete this and install it there on the wall. This wall was the entrance of the upper house. That means Vidhan Bhavan. Inside the Vidhan, whatever you call it, Vidhan Sabha. Now I began to wonder that if I were to make a painting for a political space, what would I do? But one of the dreams that I had for a long time was to paint a life-size tree. And I thought this is a good occasion if I were to make a 30-foot tree, a painting of a tree. But I was undecided. So I thought that I would make a painting of that same format, but on a small scale, 6 foot. So I made this painting, the first one. And I tried out various images, there are all kinds of, in a way it's like my hobby horse of collage. I mix images of various kinds together and put out together. But there is a central axis, if you can see, of a trunk of a tree, and everything sort of, grows around it. Well, I did this painting and put it aside, and I did a second painting. Can you show the second painting? Next one. Well, this is the second painting, which also had the tree in the middle. As you can see, the trunk, and then all the cloud-like forms around. I thought of it, Freedom at Midnight. I thought this is something about our country, India. And so I used the tree trunk as a kind of a rod. And let me tell you, here it is a, what you call churning rod, churning of the ocean. You must have heard of Samudra Manthan. So there are people pulling from two sides, and the tree is being rotated. It is in that kind of an image. And on one side, you have, people, who are left nowhere. There is also a train. I don't know whether you can make out, but the train is like train to Pakistan. And there are many other many images of Gandhiji. Gandhiji figures as a tiny figure, and he also figures in the frame outside, that outer part of the painting. So this was the second painting I did. I put aside. Next. And I decided to make a third painting. And this I finally used for the mural. That is, and enlarged it to the scale. That means, enlarged it to 31 feet high and 21 feet wide, and also made a door. That door through which the legislators pass to enter the assembly. And one of the things what I do, in a space like this, what kind of a painting would you have? What do you do it for legislators? Do we? But I thought that I will bring the story of the tradition of India, the big tree, the speaking tree. I would bring houses, people, temples, mosques, tribal people, ordinary people, people watching on computer, etc., etc. But then for that particular Vidhan Bhavan, I decided to put one thing on top of the doors. I don't know whether you can make out. It's a chair. The chair is like a throne. And that throne I picked up from the story of Vikram and the 32 dolls. I suppose you know the story. If you don't, I'll just tell you that when King Vikram tried to ascend the throne had 32 dolls on it. And one by one, each doll came out and told a story to Vikram, saying, in each story, the moral was that you got to, belong to, you got to deserve to sit on that throne. So I painted that kind of a big chair, and then 32 flying figures around, in a way like these little dolls, to tell the legislators that you to deserve to be sitting in the chairs because you are dealing with the life of people. And what is the life of people? You have to deal with the Narmada Dam, you have to deal with Union Carbide, you have to deal with communalism, you have to deal with the tribal people, etc., etc. That is what the painting is about. It took me 6 months to do it, with from 6 to 7 to finally 11 assistants working with me, and we finished it. We went and mounted it ourselves on the wall of the Vidhan Bhavan in Bhopal, and it's there if you were to go to Bhopal and see it. Next. Well, as you can see, unless you have questions, you have any questions?
So we don't have a question, but we have another photograph that may help you to explain this painting. So I'll show that photograph to you.
Okay. Aha, I'm coming to that.
Yes.
Okay, I'm coming to that. Good, you have brought this photograph. I tell you what it is. It is made in Rajasthan. It's a portable shrine. It's a kind of a temple which moves. It's made in wood and it's painted all over with multiple doors opening on both sides. And in the middle, there is a kind of a little niche in which there are images of gods and goddesses. Ideally, the performer carries it on his body. This one is too big to carry on his body. So there are smaller ones which they carry on their body. And then they open this, as you open your, on your body, and you show the doors, and then you tell the stories which are painted. It is called cover. Now, I had seen such a cover in the Crafts Museum in Delhi, a big one, about 3 to 4 feet high. This is about 2.5 feet. So, but when it's wide, it is must have been about 8 feet. And I wanted to make my own cover, but I did not want to make a religious cover. I did not want to tell the stories of gods and goddesses. I wanted to tell my own stories. So how do I do it? So I made a series of covers, smaller covers, about 1 foot in height, and then opened them up to about 5 to 6 feet, multiple doors. They close it and become a box. And then I can even show it to you. I have one cover. I can bring it here and show it to you.
Yes, sir. We will love to see it.
You can show me now, and I can show you. Can you make out?
Yes, sir.
So you can see. So these are smaller covers which I made small cover, of which I have photographs, but I haven't given them to you. And I made about 4 or 5 of them. One cover was made of what I call journeys, in which I painted on all the 34 sides of the cover. And mind you, I made a sort of my own intervention in the making of cover. Instead of opening it on 2 sides, my covers open on all 4 sides. So you have to go around and look at them. No, they can't be just seen from one side. So one was called Journey, the other one was called Miscellaneous, etc., etc. But this particular one which you are watching, I decided to make this from which you can enter. So it is 7 foot high. And all the figures, are life size. And there is a door in which you can go through, which you can go. And these are the figures which are quoted from different traditions, from Indian, from Islamic, from Hindu, from Jain, from Buddhist, from Christian, from European, from etc. And these are tiny figures which are now made into a huge, life-size figures. And they are all painted on, this is in plywood and this is the medium is acrylic. And I had a number of assistants working with me. I also needed that kind of a technical expertise of how to open. This is very, very heavy. It has to be fixed and it has to be opened from left to right. I have lots of photographs, but I can't show them to you. I wish I had a video to show it to you. But this is the kind of cover, that means 7-foot cover, which is 24 feet wide and which has multiple doors, each one painted back and forth. This is what opened further doors for me. But I will show you when I was doing this particular one, since I had already done 5 or 6 earlier. And this one was called Covered Home. Now, how do I bring you? Remember the painting about home. Now, here again, I'm talking about home. What home am I going to bring in? What kind of home am I going to construct? What is it that I'm going to paint? And by that time, I had also learned to use digital technology, and I was also able to make digital imagery. And so the next one is in the middle of this particular cover. And there are a number of images. There are 3 images, one on the left, one on the right, one on the top. Now this one is on the, if I'm not mistaken, it's on the left. What it shows, I have taken a boat which is from a painting of a Pahari painter called Nansuk. But it had now nothing to do with Nansuk. I had only taken the outline of the boat. I have also brought Kabir in it, as you can see on the right. He's seated at the helm on the right. I have also brought mountains because there is painting in Nansuk painting, there are mountains, so I brought them in. I have brought Gandhiji in it again. But Gandhiji here is with a cap. This is the time when Gandhiji was discovering India. And I was very moved by that image painted by Abanindranath Tagore. He painted an image of Gandhiji, Tagore, and Father and Andrews. I took that small picture and again I used it here. And then I construed the sea. आपको हिंदी अगर समझ में आता है तो भवसागर आप समझते हैं ना, मतलब लाइफ, द होल थिंग, भव मीन्स योर लाइफ, एंड उसका जो समंदर होता है उसको भवसागर बोलते हैं. So I will have to hold it in my hand because now the battery is low. Can I put it on?
Yes, sir. So we have around 6 more minutes with us to go. So
Want me
if
to
we can
finish here?
continue like this.
You want to have it longer or you want to have it over?
So we can continue for 6 more minutes.
3-4 minutes. Okay, I'll tell you about
Yes,
this.
sir. Okay, sure, sir.
Well, this one is sort of kind of a sea in which there is a boat adrift, and it's almost like a base poetry, and he talks about how you are caught in the Bhavsagar, and all the small figures are the big figures that I had painted in the cover. They are all brought inside as if to have a sangat. They are all together. So in a way, this is a kind of a sangat taking place in between, and then on those on the two, Kabir and Gandhiji are on both sides, which are at the helm of this boat. Is that okay?
Yes, sir. Sir, we have more of your paintings. So if you would want to talk
I
about
have
a
one
few
more
more of
painting I
them.
want you to see. Last one.
Yes, sir. Okay.
If you could give me a few more minutes.
Sure, sir. Definitely.
Last two.
Sir, is this the one?
The dark one, the grey one.
Yes, sir. So I think it will be visible in a while.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. This is the one. You see, I have done a series of works on cities. Some on the city of Baroda, some on the other cities. But this particular one, which I wanted to do, was on the city of Ahmedabad. I was particularly attracted to Ahmedabad because not only because it's a wonderful city, but also because Gandhiji made an ashram there. And I wanted to make a statement about that city, which, like all other cities, is also now changing not necessarily for good. There are all old monuments being replaced by all kinds of badly designed structures, and several other things are happening. So I have got this gray landscape of the city of Ahmedabad, which I took it from Google Earth. It is only the outline which are taken from the city, and everything else has been drawn by hand, by imagination. And so I did all this in order to show that this is the city Gandhiji left behind. So would you show the next picture, which shows what Gandhiji left behind? What it shows are the few things that he possessed, his own possessions. There is a bowl and there is a plate, thali with a bowl. There are the spectacles, there are the slippers. And these are the things that he left behind. The city, in fact, does not know that here was this great man, and what all he possessed was and also the watch. So I have painted them all at the bottom, somewhere before the river Sabarmati begins, and somewhere near where movement, that means of Dandi Yatra began, somewhere Satyagraha began. The idea of Satyagraha began. And hence, this is a painting. And this is the details of that painting called Ahmedabad, the city Gandhi left behind. Thank you.
So this was a very, very beautiful journey, a journey full of colors. Some of the paintings were so colorful, and I can't say, I mean, that I don't have words to describe these paintings. Definitely a beautiful experience, and it's very, very nice see the way you have used technology while not losing the essence of the mediums you are using. So although, if I'm not wrong, most of the paintings are in oil, but you also have a digital collage. And we have this painting, the last one. It's very special because you have used Google Maps to take out the map of Ahmedabad and use it to paint this. And we will like to show one more slide that will give our audience some idea about the scale on which you work and the way you work, the kind of struggle that it involves to make such large pieces. And if I'm not wrong, this is also a kind of a cityscape. So very amazing, sir. Thank you so much. We are very blessed that you joined us today, and we had this discussion with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, sir.
धन्यवाद सभी साथियों। इसी के साथ हमारा आज का आफ्टरनून का प्रोग्राम यहीं समाप्त होता है। आप अपनी पामिंग एक्सरसाइजेस करना ना भूलिएगा, और साथ में हमारा फीडबैक फॉर्म जो हमारी वेबसाइट www.spicmacay.org/anubhav20 पर उपलब्ध है, उसमें अपना फीडबैक ज़रूर भरें। आज शाम 6 बजे से हमारे साथ होंगे हत्रिया के गुरु घनाकांता बोरा जी और उनके साथी, और उसके बाद 7:30 बजे से हमारे साथ होंगी डॉक्टर एन राजम कर्नाटिक वायलिन पे। तो मिलते हैं आप सभी से शाम 6 बजे। धन्यवाद।